Welcome, everyone, to the discussion about the games of 2017. What I would consider to be one of the best years in gaming in recent memory, probably for a long time for me. There hasn't been this many like standout all-star games to me in a long time. Now, if you know me by now, none of this is scripted. I'm just speaking off the cuff here because I just want to give all of you my impressions of everything I played. This isn't a best of list. This isn't a games you need to play list. This is my thoughts on all of the games that came out in 2017 that I personally played, as well as some honorable mentions of games that I still need to play and that I'm going to play because they look so good. So, I will do my best to capture footage where applicable of all these games, but feel free to rip the audio because this is going to get lengthy. It's going to get real lengthy, and to be honest, for some games, it's probably going to be pretty generic footage because I'm going to have to go and capture what I can, just like where I can. So without further ado, let's get started. The first major release for me of 2017 came on January 20th. A little game called Gravity Rush 2. Now, I'd recently bought a PS4 just prior to 2017 to play Final Fantasy 15, but primarily to play a game that we'll be talking about later on this list. But Gravity Rush 1 was one of the first games I picked up, and I had an absolute blast with it. And the only reason I know about this series is from an E3 trailer, I think the year prior, showcasing Gravity Rush 2. I really didn't know anything about these games, but it caught my eye. It looked special. The art style looked fun. And I am very happy to say that Gravity Rush 2 improves on just about everything of Gravity Rush 1. So, in case you guys aren't aware of the Gravity Rush games, the best way I can describe it is it's open world, but not quite. It's more of like a Spider-Man 2. It's like a superhero game, but your superpower is literally controlling gravity. And so that means your main power is the ability to fall in whatever direction you want. So you're going to be running alongside, like, on the side of buildings, floating in the sky, and it has just the right feel of clumsiness to it. The kind of clumsiness that's like, oh, hey, I'm falling every which direction. It feels so perfect. The thing I really love about this game, though, is that it's just got those vibes. Those good feel vibes that I just don't see in games much nowadays. It's got this optimistic, happy-go-lucky attitude to it a little bit. It still deals with some dark things, and the story gets absolutely crazy. By the way, dang it, I forgot to mention in the beginning. I'm going to do my best to not talk about spoilers for any of these games, but I am going to at least talk about the basic premise for them. Never delving too much into spoilers, but if it's a sequel to a game, I might have to explain the first game a little bit, and I am going to explain the basic story points. But the vibes of this game are just, it feels like a Nintendo game. It feels like a Spider-Man 2. It's fun just moving around this world. There is combat, and it is a lot better than Gravity Rush 1. Gravity Rush 1 was kind of like you had one attack, which is the Gravity Rush kick. You just kind of like fly at him. But now you have so many more options in Gravity Rush 2. There is a little bit more ground combat. You have different styles you can get that are both feel fantastic. There's basically, you make yourself super light, and you kind of bounce and float around, really like, basically like a low gravity mode. And so you'll be like wall kicking up the side of buildings like Mega Man X 1 minute, and then you can switch to a heavy style, which allows you to like grind across the ground faster. The flow of movement in this game is just fantastic. You'll almost never just be running on the ground. Instead, you're going to be grinding on the ground, or you're going to be jumping up buildings, or you're going to be falling into the sky. It's disorienting in the most wonderful sort of way. And the cast of characters, for me, is just like a really fun romp. They're a little bit... The main character is Kat, who has no memory of her prior life, but she's this optimistic, person who wants to help in society in any way she can. And sometimes that means just doing odd jobs around the city. The thing I love about this, and I think the thing that a lot of superhero games get wrong, is superhero games are all about the stakes usually. It's like, oh no, Superman, if you don't stop that tornado, the entire city's gonna be destroyed. And it's like the stakes are like 24/7. Oh my god, the world's about to end. Whereas Kat is just trying to get the city on her side. She's just trying to be a nice person. And so you might be doing like random odd jobs around the city. And Kat stays optimistic about it. She's just a fun character. And actually maybe one of my favorite characters of the year, to be honest. She's just a joy to play as. And the supporting cast of Raven and the other guy that I can't remember the name of right now because it's been a year since I've played it. It's just a really good time. I truly feel like this is the most criminally forgotten game of the year. And whether it's because it came out at the very beginning or there's an all-star hitter like just a month later, it's a game that really shouldn't be forgotten about. I truly think this is by far definitely one of my favorite games of the year. It's just a fun, feel-good game. It's a game that I can turn on and just mess about in the world for a while with no real objective and just have a fun, chill time floating throughout the skies. Highly recommended. And if you haven't played the first Gravity Rush, go ahead and give that a play too, because it's basically the same kind of feel-good vibes. The story in Gravity Rush 2, though, I mean, the story in Gravity Rush 1 was like already very all over the place and hard to understand. Gravity Rush 2 doesn't do much better. It can be best described as schizophrenic. It doesn't know which plot thread or which plot thread or plot point it wants to go after next, and so it's just flipping between all of them constantly. And by the end, you're gonna have enjoyed the story and the characters, but you're probably still not gonna know exactly what happened, so you're gonna need to look up that plot synopsis. The other thing is, don't stop playing when the credits roll. You still got a few more hours of gameplay, and you'll see the final conclusion, which the final conclusion is fantastic. And that is the true great story. So yeah, Gravity Rush 2. Check it out, guys. Very fun game. And then next up, we have 3 releases on the same day. Three releases that I care about. The first is Resident Evil 7. And I'm not gonna lie, I actually didn't play this one until about a month ago, and I just finished the newest DLCs a few days ago. And I'd put it off. I didn't have a lot of high hopes for this game, to be honest. I've been turned off by these first-person horror games in recent years. With some of them I love. I think Amnesia is a fantastic game, and that's kind of the one that kickstarted all of this. You could maybe say Penumbra did, but it didn't really kickstart it. It was just kind of the same kind of thing. And then, we got some more imitators that followed. Soma by the same studio, which wasn't as fun gameplay-wise, but had a cool story. But then we have a lot of games like, the Slender Man or the Outlast games. And everyone went wild over Outlast. And that was basically when I was kind of done with this genre. I went into Outlast and I just wasn't having fun. It's not scary anymore. The gimmick of being unable to defend yourself didn't appeal to me anymore. And Resident Evil 7 takes this genre and I think brings it back. It gets rid of that gimmick and brings it back to a truly scary experience. And I was very pleasantly surprised. I wasn't sure what I was going to think Resident Evil 7, but now that I've finished it, I can definitively say that if you like horror games, then this is like a must play. It is genuinely scary while still being fun because you do have options to defend yourself. And it never gets frustrating in the sense of, you're not sure where to go or, what to do next. The location is brilliant. I can't remember the last time I played a game where I was like in the bayou like this. And it's a truly terrifying experience. You're stuck out in the middle of nowhere in this farm with these crazed lunatics that are basically out to kill you, and you're running around their house hiding, trying to figure out what the hell happened here and just trying to stay alive. I think the moment that this game truly felt like something special to me was an early boss fight. If you can call it a boss fight. It was basically you go into a garage and the door shuts behind you, and all of a sudden you find that you're locked in with the dad of the household, who basically starts slowly walking towards you, and he's like invincible. Nothing seems to be affecting him. You can maybe stun him for a little bit, but he gets back up and he's taunting you the whole time. He's like, "Yeah, get it back here, boy," in that southern accent that's truly terrifying. And the thing that felt so special to me is it genuinely felt like there was multiple ways this could play out. The first time I was running around like a madman, just trying to figure out what to do, and I found keys to the car. There's a car parked in this garage, but the garage door isn't open. But I said, screw it, and I ran and I got inside the car, and before I could start the car up, the father of the household grabs me, pulls me out of the car. He says, "Where do you think you're going?" And he said, "I'll show you how to drive." And he gets in the car himself and starts doing cookies in the garage to run me over. And it's like, oh my God, what's going on? And I died. And I was like, that's so crazy. Is that supposed to happen? And I tried it again the next time, and I got back in there. And this time I grabbed the keys and made sure he was super far away when I got inside the car. It's one of those things. Any other game, this would be a scripted event. He rips you out of the car no matter what. But this time, I gave myself enough time to get the car started and start moving. And so now I'm stuck in this garage. I still can't move, but I started running him over, and I'm like, "Yeah, now you're on the ropes. I got you this time." And I run him over, and then he disappears. And I'm like, "What the hell?" I start freaking out, and all of a sudden, the hood of the car gets ripped off, and he's like, "Nah, these are driving lessons." He takes the wheel and starts moving you around, and the fight just goes nuts. And the fact, and well, there really aren't any other fights that have that level of detail. It's just that moment. That was the moment when I realized that this game was something special. It's doing something that other horror games are not, and that's having essentially real gameplay other than stealth the game, and still making it a terrifying, eerie experience. If it's something that seems interesting to you, I highly recommend you check it out. The DLCs, neither of them are all that fantastic. They both tried to do different gameplay styles. One was basically more combat focused, and you just shoot everything down, whereas the other is a melee game. Honestly, I didn't like it that much. It's not that it was bad. It was just all right. But this is definitely a game that you should play. It's funny because the Resident Evil series is one of those series that is able to reinvent itself. I feel like the fans go nuts every time they do, and they're like, you don't know what true Resident Evil is. And it's like, what is true Resident Evil at this point? Because 1 through 3 were one style of game, 4 through 6 were another style of game, and this is the next evolution of that. I really like that Resident Evil is as malleable as it is to do different gameplay styles, and I can't wait for, let's be honest, there's going to be a Resident Evil 8, and if they do it in this style again, I'll be there day one to play it. Very recommended. The next game came out the same day, Tales of Berseria. Now, this is a game I actually haven't played all the way through, or played a massive portion of, to be honest, either. But throughout the years, the Tales of series has been really hit and miss for me. My main first experience was Fantasia way back in the day, but I couldn't really get into it. The first one I really got into was Symphonia, back on the GameCube, and that game was excellent for the time. Very fun. I had a blast, and then I would later go back and play it co-op, which is one of the great things about these Tales of games, is that they're all basically co-op to some degree, and since it's an action RPG, it flows really, really nicely with that. To be able to have a friend come in, sure, it's still an RPG at heart, but to have a friend come in for the battles, at least my personal friend doesn't seem to mind not being able to control anything else other than the battles. He still has a blast, because, you're still seeing the rest of the story. And so, I really liked Symphonia, and I thought Vesperia was also a really good game. But to be honest, a lot of the other Tales of games, especially in recent memory, have been really more on the miss side. I try to go back and play some of the other ones. everyone seems to love and talk about how great Abyss is. And to that I say, what? That's not a very good game at all. The characters were and the story is And whenever you say that, the fans say, no, 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 no. You gotta wait, man. You didn't play. You gotta get 30 hours in. Then you hit that point, and the story gets awesome. The story and characters do a 180, and they get awesome. It's like, yeah, that's definitely the makings of a good game. And so I wasn't sure what to expect with Berseria, but I was looking for a game to play with my friend, because we hadn't had a nice co-op game in a while. I said, you know what? If I get Berseria, do you want to play it with me? So we got it, and to be honest, I've really liked what I've played so far. I wouldn't say it's like an all-star, you gotta play this game this year, but if you're looking for a Tales game, I think this is one of the best ones they've made in a while. The characters, while still very tropey, are a lot more interesting and fun than prior games, because now you're playing as more of an anti-hero, with enough edge and brood to, like, cut the deepest slice of bread ever. It's like there's so much brood going on that it hits some kind of, it hits some kind of level that it suddenly becomes really good. And the combat is really fun too. They went away with the TP system, and now the combat's a lot more free-flowing. Felt awesome. Really enjoy it. Genuinely not that far into it, and it's going to be an extremely long-term project, as my friend now lives on the other side of the state, and so we won't get to play it too often. I don't want to play it without him, but it's definitely a game that, if you're into Tales games, into action RPGs, might be worth a look. Now, a game that I haven't played that came out on the same day, honorable mention, definitely gotta go to Yakuza 0, and this is high up on my list of games that I need to play. I've never played a game in the Yakuza series, but it's always looked super intriguing to me. From what I understand, it's similar to the Shenmue series, which I've also never played, but that style of open world, kind of like, it's like a beat 'em up, but then like RPG mechanics and kind of an open world nature to it. It's like a modern day River City Ransom, and I want to play it really bad. From what I hear, it's one of the best entries in the series, and most people consider it an incredibly good starting point for the franchise, because it's a prequel and it helps get you interested in the rest of the story, which I hear the story is pretty great, but it's been tough throughout the years because some do come overseas and some don't, and so this just seems like a really good place to start, and so that's definitely on my radar. You might have noticed a trend. Most of these games are PS4, and this was like the year of PS4. Well, Resident Evil 7 was on Xbox One. Gravity Rush 2, Berseria, and Yakuza 0 were all basically PS4 exclusive, as long as you don't count, Windows ports as breaking that exclusivity, which, if you did, there'd basically be next to no exclusives. So yeah, extremely strong month in January. I mean, this kicked the year off so well, and it was just like a taste of things to come. So next up, an honorable mention goes to Robot Dinosaurs the game. Okay, it's actually called Horizon Zero Dawn, but it is a game that I thought for sure I would pick up when I first bought my PS4. I was actually planning on getting it, and as it got closer to release, I started to see more of the things that I maybe wouldn't like as much. It's more open world in nature than I thought. It seems to have a lot of crafting, which every game feels like it needs a crafting system these days, and I'm so over crafting. Do you guys know what I mean? Like, I see a game that boasts, like, we got crafting, craft 200 different ammos and weapons. It's like, oh, I look forward to the trash mechanics where I'm just constantly picking crap up, and it just never, it never feels satisfying, and everything just feels worthless that you craft, except for, like, a handful of things. It's just tedious. The crafting menu's never designed well. So I saw that, and then I saw it was open world, and so it turned me off a bit. But it has gotten so much critical acclaim that I do feel I need to pick it up at some point, especially since this was one of the games that astounded me the most when I saw it at E3, because it genuinely looked fun. I mean, it's Robot Dinosaurs, guys. Come on. It looks very cool. It's a game that I will probably get at some point, but it's a little bit lower on my list of games that I want to play. Now, on the same day as Horizon Zero Dawn, another game that I haven't played yet, but honorable mentions, got to go to the new Planescape Torment game. Yeah, that's right. They released a sequel to Planescape Torment, that game that was practically a visual novel, but made in the Baldur's Gate engine way back in the day. Uh, I'm interested in this game to a point. It's tough because I feel like it's going to be a very long game. And so, while the first Planescape Torment was a joy for me to play, primarily because I'm in college and I am bored of what the teacher is talking about. So why don't I play a game where I basically read text and play Planescape Torment instead? And that's how I experienced the first game, but now I just don't have as much free time anymore. And I don't know if I could play a game like this that I would have to imagine. I haven't looked at reviews or anything, but I would have to imagine it's following a trend of the first game in that combat is like 5% of the game and talking your way out of situations and dialogue with people is the other 95%. Which is not a bad thing if that's what you're looking for, but it's just a game that you really have to sit down and be in the mood for. And I'm probably not going to get around to this game until I get in that mood, until I say, I have not seen a good story in a while, and I just need a really good story. That said, I think it's incredible that a game like this can be made. I believe it was a Kickstarter. I think it's awesome that games like this can still be made in today's era and be loved by people. So, good on ya. I'll play you eventually. Yeah, I probably will. Next up, the big one. The one that everyone goes nuts for. The one that's everyone can't stop talking about, except they don't really talk about it that much anymore, except for Game of the Year awards. But, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Boy, this is going to be an interesting one to talk about. So my experience with Breath of the Wild is limited. I played it on my friend's Wii U for about a few hours, 4 hours maybe. I got off the plateau, which is only going to mean something to people that have played the game. And during my time, I thought it was all right. It's an open world game. It's got interesting things that I like. It's got like a lot of learn as you go things. I think one of my favorites is I'm just running around and it's like, oh, here's this chasm. How am I going to deal with that? And there's trees there. And I'm like, well, and then I cut the tree down and the log fell across the chasm. And it's like really freeform. I mean, you can cut down any tree. And kind of use it in the environment like that. And I think that's the game's biggest strength, is that it's kind of like it's like a big playground. It's a big structured playground that had design in mind. It's not like a randomly generated playground like a Minecraft. There are puzzles, and it seems like there are multiple ways to solve each puzzle using things in the environment, and I think that's pretty cool. That said, I did think the world felt kind of empty compared to what I would consider to be the open world norm. And while it is interesting that you get all of your puzzle items within like the first 3 to 4 hours, which is very unusual for a Zelda game, and some of the puzzle items are like genuinely unique, and not just rehashes of old Zelda items that we typically see in these games. But I don't know. It could have been the mood I was in. It could have been a lot of things, but it really wasn't gelling with me the same way it seemed to gel with everyone else. This game is now one of the highest rated video games of all time. Game of the Year awards. Everyone loves it. And here I am on the other side of the fence. The other side of the fence, and I'm just like, it seems all right. I don't really know. I don't know what this game is doing all that better than any other open world game on the market. And part of me wonders if you were to just strip out the Zelda references and replace Link with someone else and replace Zelda with another character that acted the exact same, would it be as critically acclaimed as it is? And I don't know if it would be. It's certainly got a lot of interesting ideas, but the menu feels clunky, and I'm totally not sure I just don't know if the format of Zelda works in an open world structure like this. And I say this liking Zelda 1. Everyone's going, well, that's what Zelda's always been about. No, Zelda 1 was more contained than this. It still followed a very traditional Zelda formula. Everyone likes to compare Breath of the Wild and be like, we're bringing it back to the roots of the first Zelda. Zelda 1 was open world back in like 1980s, guys. You can't really... Open world back then was like, wow, a new screen on the overworld might lead into this secret cave. That's incredible. And trust me, Zelda 1, I grew up with that. It's a fascinating game. But this is kind of a different beast altogether, and it just feels... I don't know. The art style was good, but there's certain things about an open world game that don't seem to gel super well, which is most like the RPG mechanics, I would say. Very early on, weapons break super fast. We're talking like I hit 4 dudes with a sword and the sword like shatters into a million pieces. It's like we're stuck in Baldur's Gate 2 syndrome where my weapons are breaking every 2 seconds because there's a ore shortage or something. So one of the first things I think it was called the Warrior's Sword. It was probably a bottom of the barrel sword, but it was the best thing I had. And I went up into this camp of moblins and I said, ooh, there's a treasure chest over there. I want that. And so I fought my way through the moblins and I was like, you know what? Let's give this Warrior's Sword a spin. And my Warrior's Sword shattered on the last moblin. And I was like, yeah, take that. All right, what did I get? What's my reward? And I opened the chest, and in it is a Warrior's Sword. The exact same one that just broke. Same stats, no difference. It's just another one that I can use before it breaks. And that's the kind of stuff that kind of gets me down. I feel like, yeah, there probably is a lot to do in this world, but how much of it is meaningful? What's the reward going to be? Is it just going to be another breakable weapon? Is it just going to be, 50 rupees that probably won't really be all that useful? I don't know. I definitely have to play more of this game. I know everyone is probably screaming at their monitors right now saying, boy, you just don't get it, Minotaur. You just don't get it. And maybe I don't. It's a game, now that I own a Switch, I've recently bought one, I am going to give this game a fair shake. It's too critically acclaimed for me to not give it a true fair shake and play more of it. So, all I can say for now is that it was alright. But next up is the next big game for me after Gravity Rush 2. And I was really excited for this one for a couple of different reasons. On March 7th, we got Nier Automata. Now, the first Nier game I had played a few years back, and this is truly what can be called a cult classic. I know cult classic gets thrown around a lot these days. For games like people will be like, Chrono Trigger is a cult classic. It's like, I don't know if you can call it a cult classic anymore. It's pretty well known. Most people, it has a pretty big fan base. The first Nier, now that's a niche game. That is a game that genuinely had very mediocre gameplay, and the story was mediocre until about 6 hours in. But the reason it became a cult classic is because after that first 6 hours, the story becomes incredible. The gameplay never really gets better, but the story becomes incredible, and it has the perfect weirdness to it that only, I believe his name is Yoko Taro, that only he can bring to his games. He is some kind of weirdness genius. Seriously. So when Nier Automata was announced, I was excited for 2 words. Platinum Games. Because honestly, I didn't know if I could trust this studio to fix the combat, to make it better. But they brought Platinum Games in to do it. And if you guys don't know Platinum Games, this is like the all-star, be-all, end-all action game developer. We're talking our Bayonettas. We're talking like Bayonetta 2, the pinnacle of action games to me. That was them. Platinum Games is amazing, and they generally make really good games. And I know people are really, oh, what about Star Fox Zero? Get that out of here. When they make action games, it's amazing. And so we have this great new action RPG that's more action than RPG, but still enough action, or still enough RPG elements. And we have the fusion of Yoko Taro's brilliantly weird mind melded into it. And what we have is an excellent game for me. See, this is the thing. I feel that this is still a very hit or miss game. It was very well received. But Pig Butt, it starts off fairly slow again, and doesn't ramp up until later on. I personally know 2 people that have picked this game up. One of them, I thought for sure he would be into this story. I mean, this is a story right up his alley, and he put it down. And while I'm going to keep convincing him to pick it back up, it just seems like the game just doesn't click for some people. The story setup is very interesting, in a weird way. It takes place in the future on Earth. And basically, in the past, aliens came to Earth. But rather than, getting off their ships, they sent a whole bunch of robots after us and just, flooded the world with the robots. And they're like, boom, robot war. And so the humans were like, oh shit, we can't fight robots. Wait a second, let's all fly to the moon. And then we're going to build our own robots, and we're going to have a robot war on the Earth. And so the humans made androids. And the androids' sole purpose, operating from a space station orbiting the Earth, is to basically go combat the alien robots that essentially now occupy the Earth. The aliens left a long time ago. No one knows what happened to them. But the robots are still there. And so you play as 2B and Sidekick 9S as they basically run around and try and kill these robots, stop them from terrorizing the last few remaining camps of androids on the Earth that are basically fighting for their lives. The story is very interesting because while we have these androids, they are programmed with human emotions and to be as human as possible. Now, why this isn't really fully explained, and basically the story reveals itself over a long time. It's a slow burn, and if it's a game that you have to give time. I promise, it's one of those things, I promise you everything will make sense by the end, and you're gonna have some big reveal moments like, whoa, they've totally been alluding to this throughout the game, but I never caught on to that. And it's a game that I think the combat is good enough to draw you in, and then you'll stay for the story. And it's infused with this weird existentialism story of what it really means to be human. What does it really mean to have a purpose in life? And yet at the same time, it's infused with this Yoko Taro weirdness. For example, when asked, why does Combat Android 2B have high heels? His response was, I don't know. I like girls. Girls are pretty. And that's all he can answer. And it's like, only the weirdness of this guy could bring us something so magnificent. It truly is one of the standout games this year if you give it the time of day. And I don't even say that as in it gets good. If it starts off bad and it gets good. It starts off good. Just don't let yourself get bogged down with side quests too much, because the side quests, gameplay wise, are not very good, but story wise are actually pretty cool. And the other big thing to watch out for that I think a lot of people don't realize is that you're going to see the credits roll, and that means you're about 1/4 of the way done with the game. And I think a lot of people stop. This is like a trademark of this guy as well. The first Nier was like this. You're going to see the credits roll, and it's going to be a pretty mediocre, satisfying ending. You're going to be like, that's it? We're going to end it there, huh? And you'll be like, well, I guess I'm done. And then you'll see that it lets you save a clear data. You need to load that up, and you basically play through the game again, although it's much shorter this time. It's like a more condensed version, and there's twists, and you learn more about the story, and you're going to play that. and then you're going to have to play this, and then you're going to get credits again, and you're going to want to load that file up. And eventually it's going to get to this point where you're playing like the sequel to the game that you just played. And so you need to keep doing that, because if you see the credits roll, that doesn't mean you beat the game. It's a trap. You're missing out on all the best parts of the game. That's all I can really say. The soundtrack is beautiful, by the way. Absolutely gorgeous. If nothing else, check out this soundtrack, because it is this, much like the first Nier, it is this brilliant, every track fits every situation perfectly, but I feel like it's the music you could listen to outside of it. It's this perfect fusion of like this orchestrated music infused with like some vocals, but the vocals aren't any specific language. It's like a made-up language, and it just sounds beautiful. Highly recommended. I loved this game through and through. I could not stop playing it. It is very interesting. It is very weird, and I think weird is good in an industry where we get a lot of the same. I think we can all agree on that. We get a lot of the same in this industry. A lot of iterative stuff, and this game truly does do something different with its story, and it is a unique game. So, next up, dishonorable mention to a game I didn't play, but Mass Effect Andromeda of March 21st. I'm a big fan of the Mass Effect franchise. I really liked 1 through 3. Yes, even 3. In fact, I thought its ending was all right. I'm one of those few people that, liked picking the color of flavored Kool-Aid at the end of the game. No, I didn't like it, but it wasn't that bad. And then Mass Effect Andromeda comes out, and I mean, it's just a game I have to mention, because in a sea of super fantastic games that I've gone through so far, I mean, ultra great, this game comes out, high profile franchise, and just like trips on its shoelaces literally as the starting gate opens up. The bugs are genuinely hilarious. The story sounds really bad based on what I've heard and talked to people about, and I have no interest in playing this game. I think it goes to show it's a good lesson to publishers that we're not the simple-minded fools that we once were in this industry. You cannot just shove off one of your highest profile franchises to your C team, have them crap it out in front of us, and expect us all to buy it. Because we're a lot less trusting of brand names these days than we were 6 years ago. 6 years ago, we would have said, Mass Effect, yeah, I'll buy it no matter what. I'm sure it's great. And now we're smarter. We're going to look at what people say. We're going to look at reviews. And, I hope that isn't the tragic end of that franchise. But EA has basically said, we'll shelf it and come back to it at a later date. Which to me, I think means that probably won't see another one for at least another 5 years. Because they want that one to wear off a little bit. They don't want that fresh. They don't want Andromeda fresh in the minds of everyone. So yeah, that's all I really had to say. It's more just point a finger and laugh at how the characters' faces hurt in game. So yeah, didn't play that one. Not intending to ever, probably. But next up, my most anticipated game of the year. Been waiting for this one for like 5 years since I had played the previous one. Critically acclaimed. I knew it was going to be great. I never pre-order games, and I pre-ordered this one. Knew it was going to be amazing. Couldn't wait. And it came out on the PS3? Okay, also the PS4, but you guys know what I'm talking about. The game that made me get up, wake up, get up, and get out there. Persona 5. Seriously, this game is incredible. I have been waiting so long for this since I finished Persona 4. Never before have I played a game with this much style. It is not pushing the most polygons. It is not, technically speaking, it is not the best looking game out there. But art style wise, it's the best looking game out there. This is the crappy part, because my footage is probably going to suck, because this is an incredibly story heavy game, so I can't use my save file from the end, And it's probably going to take me like 3 hours to get interesting footage if I start from the beginning. Especially since I believe they lock out recording footage for this game like 90% of the time so that people don't reveal spoilers. What an incredible game. There are few games. In my older age, I have tended to enjoy shorter games more. Shorter, more concise games are better with no filler. There are like 2 exceptions to this. One is Persona 5, one is Persona series in general, and another is we're going to be talking about later. This game is like a straight up 100-hour extravaganza. You could maybe cut it down to like 80 if you're really not caring about side quests or whatever, but it is a long game. And not once. Okay, there was like one time where it dragged a little bit, but never to the point where I would even possibly consider stopping. It was an enjoyable ride throughout the whole thing. The music is this brilliant infusion of jazz. I mean, Meguro is like a musical genius. He has no specific style. Like a Sakuraba soundtrack, I can pick that out a mile away. Sakuraba, I'm not saying Sakuraba music is bad, but let's be honest. If someone started playing a track from a Tales of game or anything Sakuraba has made, and you didn't know, they didn't tell you it was a Sakuraba track, you could probably say, oh yeah, that's probably from the latest Tales game, right? But Meguro always has this, God, I hope I get that name right, is always able to switch his style, and he makes it different for every game. Persona 3 was kind of like this dance club, like, rap a little bit. Persona 4 is like pop, and Persona 5 is like this slick jazz fused with like some lyrics, and it's all just fantastic. The story of the game is definitely the highlight, and it deals with a lot of complex issues that I think media is just, it's issues that media is too scared to touch, and if they do touch it, they generally don't touch it well, and they get a huge amount of backlash for it, whereas Persona 5 handles all of these things expertly. I can't talk about the dark themes and some of the stuff they go into, because I don't want to spoil it, but anyone who's played the game, or at least made it the first 10 or 15 hours in, knows exactly what I'm talking about. It deals with some heavy themes, and it deals with its overarching plot kind of revolves around rebelling against an unfair society. A society that basically doesn't care for you, judges you before they meet you. And it's about rebelling to try and shift those societal norms into something better. Every character in the game comes, and they've all been wronged or shunned by society in some way for something that's been completely out of their control. For example, the main character early on is basically moving to this new city purely because he was convicted of assault on an adult. And so his parents were ashamed. They didn't want to be associated with him. The school didn't want him anymore, and so they shipped him off to this other city so that he could hopefully have a new life. But as he gets there, everyone in the school already knows what he did before he gets there, and no one wants anything to do with him. As you're running through the hallways, you'll see little speech bubbles show up of people like, "Oh my God, there he is! Don't look at him! Don't look at him!" And it's just like this incredible feeling of being like shunned in society, and I feel like this game deals with issues in both society and like the social groupthink of today's world, and over-reliance on just assuming everything that the media says is correct, and generally not really giving a shit for the general public. And I think it's something that really speaks strongly to today's society. I think it absolutely is relevant in today's society, and this whole being too scared to break out of the social norm, and it's probably more applicable to Japan culture than American, but I think it's something that speaks to all cultures really, and it deals with And the best part is it never feels like it gets preachy about it. It never feels like it's telling you one way is better than the other. For example, the entire game basically revolves around you are the Phantom Thieves, and you have the ability to go inside people's hearts, the people that are twisted, people that are genuinely, from your point of view, harming society in some way or another, or abusing their power, or doing something twisted. And you have the power to basically change the way they think, change the way they view the world, and the things they do outside of their control. It's not up to them, and you can basically you basically tell people what to think. And it brings up an interesting ethical dilemma that the characters struggle with throughout the game. In that, is it really ethical? Is it ethical to change someone's mind outside of their control, even if they're a jerk, even if they're wronging society? Is it ethical to do that? And the game never gets preachy about it. And so I know some people might think I'm delving into spoilers, but some of this should be obvious. And I'm getting a general overview because I'm trying to get people excited about this game to go play it. And if you're that concerned about spoilers for this game, you've already played it. It's not an issue to you. I'm just trying to get people hyped to go play this game. So for all the people that are about to scream at me and say, oh, you're not supposed to talk about that yet, all of this stuff happens, relatively early on for a 100-hour game. And I'm just trying to an overview of the things you can expect. The game starts off super strong. It starts you off in the middle of a heist at a casino, and you don't really know what's going on, but you're on like the getaway. You made the heist, but you're trying to get out of there, and so you're jumping from chandelier to chandelier in like this stylish game. And the problem is that it doesn't go according to plan, and you get caught by the police as you're escaping. And the next thing you know, the main character wakes up beaten and bruised in the interrogation room by crooked cops, and basically the rest of the game is recounting how it got to that point, how it came to this, how this whole Phantom Thieves thing started. The game is like one part classic turn-based JRPG, and if you've ever played a Persona game, you know what you're getting here. It's classic. If you ever played Persona 3 or 4, you know what you're getting here. It's basically a game of strengths and weaknesses. You're trying to hit the enemies by swapping out your persona into a different one to hit their elemental weaknesses, because every time you do, you get to go again. You get to take your next turn right away. And the whole goal is to basically try and never let the enemies have a turn to begin with, because they can shred you pretty fast. The gameplay felt easier to me, and I never really had any trouble, but I think that's because it's my third Persona game now. Because I know at least 2 other people who are like, man, this game's super tough. I'm having a rough time. And they're both well-versed in RPGs, and I think it's just whether you've played a Persona game before or not, because it can be tough to get the hang of at first for newbies. So the game is like one part turn-based strategy, and the other part like story, character-driven time management system. See, when you're not in the dungeon, you're going day by day in the normal life of a high schooler, meeting people and doing various activities, but you only have so much time to do those, and going to the dungeon also takes time. And so yeah, you are technically on a time limit, and I want to stress to people that get freaked out about this, like people that say, oh, I would never be able to play Majora's Mask, I couldn't handle that time limit. The time limit is incredibly generous here. I mean, super generous. You basically have to purposely miss the time limit for completing the dungeon if you want to get a game over, I guess. And even then, I think it still backs you up. It'll be like, all right, let's put you back like a week prior, and so you can try again. But it's one part time management, because this is how, a good portion of how your strength grows in battle is basically developing bonds and friendships with people in the real world. And this is like one of the strongest, to me. They were called social links in prior games. They're called confidants now. The confidants have never been stronger in a Persona game in my mind. I thought they all had very interesting stories to tell. And they all have to deal with, in some ways, being shunned or wronged by society. Sometimes for something that they truly did do wrong. For example, early on, you'll meet a government official who was guilty. The world basically threw him out of office because he was corrupt. He was accused of doing corrupt things. And yeah, he freely admits, he's like, it was because I didn't stop him. I mean, I was kind of part of it because I didn't stop these things. But now he's so labeled by society, he just wants to get back into office so that he can actually do good in the world. But no one trusts him anymore. And it's being prejudged. It's like this whole like labeled by the society of like, nope, you screwed up once, never, you're just trash now. And it tells really interesting stories like that really just, it's hard to describe. It's a very story-heavy game. You got to be willing to. There are times where you'll do like 3 hours of story time before you go back into the dungeon. But if you can get past those, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. If you're talking about pacing in a game, yeah, there's pacing issues. There always will be with games of this style. But if you can get past them, there's a truly special game here. The soundtrack is phenomenal. I still listen to it as I get ready in the morning, constantly. In fact, my brother, the story was so interesting to my brother, who wasn't even playing this game. He would call me up like every 2 or 3 days or so just to hear what happened next in the story. Be like, you played more Persona 5, right? So what happened? What happened? Did you get him? And it's like, I just explained the story. We talked for like another half hour about all the crazy things that happened in the story. And he's never even played the game. He listens to the soundtrack all the time, apparently. He told me during Christmas. He's like, yeah, no, I still listen to Persona 5 all the time. I can't wait for that Persona 5 dancing game to come out so we get like remixes and more music tracks, which I can't wait for either. It's a big time commitment. I get it. And, I shouldn't even have to. It goes without saying, if you're a fan of JRPGs, you need to play this game. But it really does go without saying, because if you are a JRPG fan, you played it already. You know what I'm talking about. But for those of you who are on the fence, who are just outsiders looking in, and you look at this and you say, psh, it's just Dating Simulator 9000, whatever. Like, shame on you. It's really not like that. It's not. It's so much more. It tells a really interesting story. The characters are fun. The gameplay is interesting. And it proves that game developers of this day and age are wrong, because turn-based JRPGs of a pretty typical format can still be wildly entertaining and wildly popular, because this is one of the highest rated games of the year and definitely deserves to be played. If you play nothing else this year, please play Persona 4 or Persona 5. Well, play Persona 4 as well, but Persona 5 first. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about it. I think I've gushed enough. Let's jump into the next game. I mean, that game took up a lot of my time. I played that pretty much straight through. I didn't play much else in between. Fantastic game, definitely worth the hype. So next up, we got a game that I played a few months after it came out, and that is Prey. It came out on May 5th, and this game came out, and I really, isn't this an anomaly? I mean, we had the first Prey as it was either a launch title or a near launch title to the Xbox 360, and I never played it, but it was a quirky little game. I mean, I think you're like, a guy that goes into space and is running. It's like a space Turok, really. But I mean, with minus dinosaurs plus aliens. But here we have this revival in name only. I mean, there's like zero connections to that first game, and it is so unrelevant on every level that I really question why they called it Prey. It's similar to like when XCOM was first announced, like the new XCOM. I don't know if you guys remember this. I mean, I was like a fresh XCOM fan before this reveal came. I mean, I had played UFO Defense relatively early. And E3, shows up and there's this weird game. It's like, what's going on? It's kind of like got this 1950s aesthetic, and we're going around and now there's this black goo, and it's like a first person like action game. Is this BioShock? It looks like BioShock. Is it BioShock? And then it ends and it's like XCOM, and we were all scratching our heads like, what? Why did you feel the need to use that name? Why did you what prompted you to slap a beloved like franchise that was known for strategy games on like a first person game like this? And that's exactly what Prey feels like. It's like it's so far removed from that game. I mean, it's still a first person shooter, but why are you calling it Prey? I don't get it. And so the first Prey looked interesting to me after I started seeing reviews, because really it's kind of like a new BioShock game. It's a BioShock imitator. That's the best way I can describe it. It's trying super super hard to be BioShock. System Shock as well, for those of you that didn't play BioShock but played System Shock. And that intrigued me. It's been a long time since a new BioShock game has come out, and I usually really like that format. So I said, hey, I'll give it a try. I believe it's Arcane Studios. I was kind of into Dishonored, but it kind of fell off for me. But I'll give them another try. And the game starts off much like Dishonored, the game starts off super strong. It is tense. It's kind of creepy. The aliens are interesting. I genuinely think the concept of an alien that just mimics something in the room, like a potted plant, and you're genuinely like, this room is like torn apart. Is that potted plant real or fake? I'm not sure. And that tension is genuinely cool. By far the coolest moments of the game. Just those early moments of like, I don't know what's real. But as you go through the game, it's a bit too RPG for me, if you know what I mean. And it's the same problem I had with Dishonored. It feels more RPG than anything else, and not like a good kind of RPG. It's an action game, but everything is so heavily determined by RPG elements. It's like a bad. I wouldn't say bad. It's like a below average Deus Ex kind of game, in that if you've ever played RPGs before, you know the right skills to take on the skill tree. If you glance at it, you're like, oh, let me look at the skill tree. Yep, useless. Pick that up right away. Get more experience for more skill trees later. Yep, take that. More inventory space. Take that. You take all the interesting ones, and then by the end of the game, you're like, well, I've already gotten all the good ones. I guess I'll just start getting stuff randomly. And it's one of those games that just feels like you get too powerful by the end. And it makes a lot of the encounters less interesting because you are now this ultra powerful badass and nothing scares you anymore. It has a interesting story. I feel like it really goes off the rails. It tries really hard to be deep, especially towards the end of the game. But I think it was less trying. I think they tried to make it seem like it was deep, but I think it was more just a crap. We're not really sure how we want to end this game. Let's just throw in some deep philosophical bullshit. And the premise early on, like, they set up so many mysteries. There's mysteries throughout the game, and they keep throwing more and more at you, and it just gets more and more convoluted. And then by the end of the game, when you get the answer to all of it, it felt really unsatisfactory to me. And then there was like these anti-gravity sections that I was not digging at all. They're so slow and tedious to navigate through. It was really cool for like the first 20 minutes, and then they overused it. So yeah, is Prey worth picking up? It's certainly not a bad game. I would say it's above average, but I don't think I would say it's in the top echelon of games that came out this year. Worth a look if you see it, on the cheaper side, if you're in the mood for a more BioShock like kind of game. And if you've really liked Arcane Studios' other games like Dishonored, to be honest, you're probably going to absolutely adore this one. I think it's more that their style of game just doesn't seem to appeal to me as much. But I think if it appeals to you, like if you think the Dishonored games are great, you really should look at this one because you'll probably really love it. So yeah. Next up, Guilty Gear Xrd. Revolution 2? Revision 2? I'm not sure. It came out on May 26th. I'm not gonna lie, I've played like 30 to 45 minutes of this game with my usual group of friends where we get together and play fighting games every so often. And so I don't have too much to say other than I really, really like Arc System Works games. I am not good at them, but I really like them. The graphics are super appealing and the characters are goofy as all get out, and I love it. If you're a fighting game fan, I know it's really hard to play something other than the most mainstream crap like a Street Fighter or something like that. But I really think it's a game that probably deserves more attention. The only problem is it's super complex. There's like 4 gauges, and there's all these special moves, and it's so hard. And then I mash buttons and I just get absolutely destroyed, but I still have a blast. Still a fun time. Check it out if you like fighting games. Next up, honorable mention, if only for what I saw in a news article, because I didn't even know this game existed, and that's Nex Machina. Legitimately didn't hear anything about this game, didn't know anything until I saw an article that basically said that the studio, and now that I saw the studio, I was like, oh wow, yeah, they made some really cool, interesting games. They made like Resogun, and things like that. And so they basically said, yeah, Nex Machina, one of the most critically acclaimed games of the year, sold like garbage, so we're not really gonna make things like it anymore. And I was like, what? No, I gotta look at this now. And then I look at it and I'm like, this is right up my alley. Boy, I want to go buy this right now. It's a twin stick shooter like a Smash TV or Geometry Wars, but the graphics are like the graphical style or the art style is like brilliant. It's like this neon, like almost it's like a Tron-like art style, and it just looks crazy. I want to play it. It looks really fun. It's definitely on my list of things to pick up now. It's a shame though that they're not going to be making any more. So yeah, I just wanted to bring it up. It looks really cool. I think people should check it out. Next up is a game that I have not played. I don't intend on getting, but I feel like I had to mention it because I find this tool, it's technically a game, but I find this tool fascinating, and it was a really interesting port that my friend got, and he got really into for a little while, and that's RPG Maker Fez, or FES, however you want to say that. It's a 3DS port of RPG Maker, essentially. And what RPG Maker is it's basically just, it's software to help anyone make their own RPG. It's the right kind of complexity that can, if someone's determined enough, can get into it. I myself have played around with an RPG Maker on PC for a while, and to be honest, I would love to make an RPG one day, but the time commitment is like super over my head. I don't think I ever would. But my friend bought it on 3DS, and he was having a blast, and I just think it's fascinating that while the tools are not there, you're not going to get the same potential as like an RPG Maker for the PC, and I'm sure the controls are more clumsy. I just think it's fascinating, and I think it's an interesting little game that, even my friends can really dig into and just have fun playing around with things like a Mario Paint style. And so I just thought I'd bring it up. It's kind of an interesting little release. Next up, on June 30th, Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. I really don't have too much to say about this. I haven't played it, but I probably will pick it up at one point because it's Crash Bandicoot, man. It's the first 3 Bandicoots in one collection, and to be honest, I have really fond memories of those games. It was my introduction into the PlayStation, basically, and going over to my friend's house and playing Crash Bandicoot 1, 2, and 3 are some really good freaking memories. In fact, he was the new kid to town, and I had never even heard of a PlayStation. So I went over there. I was like, "Hey, how's it going? You want to hang out?" Went over there. We played Crash Bandicoot. It's a blast. Super fun. And so, having an updated version of those is something I definitely want to check out. And I think it's great that out of all the remasters we get nowadays, we're starting to remaster games that are like 1 or 2 freaking years old, which is just absurd. that we can see a game series, games that actually could really use a remaster, get a remaster, like the Insane Trilogy, and then, you know, actually have it sell well and show developers like, hey, these are the kind of games that, you know, if you're going to remaster, these are the games you should remaster. Stop remastering, like, The Last of Us, like, a year and a half after it comes out. So yeah, definitely going to pick that up. Next up, one I did pick up, fairly close to release, actually. Not at release, but Final Fantasy XII Remaster. I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm a huge Final Fantasy fanboy. Absolute, like... Without Final Fantasy, I don't know if I would be as interested in games. I know they say that about some games like Chrono Trigger and, you know, the original, you know, Mario Bros. 3, and there's some stuff like that. But genuinely, it was the first game growing up when it came out on the NES, and I picked it up. It captured my imagination. It was this whole new world. It definitely felt something different, with a story. And I've been a fanboy ever since. Final Fantasy VII is incredible. I don't care what you haters say. You had to be there at the time. And so, yeah, I generally pick up most Final Fantasies. In fact, I actually have a lot to say about Final Fantasy 15, but I tried to make it a hard, clear-cut rule of it must come out in 2017, and that game came out at, like, the end of November 2016. And so I have a lot to say about that game, but I cut it off because it would probably extend this thing another 20 minutes, and I wanted to make some rules. Otherwise, I'd be talking about everything. But Final Fantasy XII Remaster. Final Fantasy XII was a game that... it was when the Final Fantasy series... It wasn't a bad game when I played it back in the day. In fact, I played the crap out of it. I played a lot of it, but it never engaged me. It never gave that fun factor that I had with most other Final Fantasies. It felt like it was missing something, and I think what it was missing was interesting characters for the most part. You can do a whole lot of research into the development of this game, but basically they're going to make one of your party members the main character, but instead, at the last second, some higher-up said, boy, I don't know if the population is really going to dig a grizzled war veteran as a main character. He sounds pretty boring, but you know what we should do is put a naive orphan kid there as the main character. That is definitely who should be the main character. So they threw Vaughn at us, and Vaughn is like legitimately the most boring character of all time, and he actively makes the game worse, I feel. Which, you know, that's not an astute observation by me. That's basically most people's thoughts. So I wanted to pick this game up again, mainly for one thing. I wanted to give it another fair shake, because I genuinely didn't remember much about the story, and I felt that it's a less character-driven story and more like political, kind of like a Vagrant story or Final Fantasy Tactics. And I figured in my old age I could, appreciate something like that a little bit more. And also, the original game was super slow at times. And this remaster has the feature to do both a 2x and 4x speed, which really helps with the tedium. And I'm not gonna lie, I was enjoying it a lot more thanks to those, because when you've got to trek across a town with a, relatively slow movement speed, cramming on 4 times speed and just blasting across makes the game a lot more palatable. The problem is there's just so many other great games to play this year, and it got lost in the shuffle. Maybe I'll go back to it, maybe I won't. I like the job system a lot more that they have here. My other big problem with the original is that none of the characters felt unique, because everyone could do everything. And this game enforces a job system that they created for like a separate release over in Japan that never came over. But my big problem is they made it easier, because now you can pick 2 jobs, and so now you're way more powerful, and the game's easier as a compensation for that. And that kind of turns me off, because I'm going to play through a game again. I don't want it to just be like an easy blast through it. I'd almost like more of a challenge. So yeah, it's something I'll probably get to. It's an interesting remaster, to say the least. I think it's really funny how we keep getting all of these remasters from the PS2 era of games that, they can basically crap out with not a whole lot of effort. They just slap on some slightly higher resolution textures and character models. Most of the time they don't even mess with the textures. Rather than actually doing a meaningful remaster to something like, say, well, okay, they are doing a Final Fantasy VII one now, but maybe something like a Final Fantasy VI. I would love to see that game essentially remade for the modern era, but still maintain its identity. I think that would be incredible. But whatever. That's a discussion for another time. Final Fantasy XII Remaster. If you really liked Final Fantasy XII, I mean, get it. It's different enough to be another fun ROM through it, and you can skip through a lot of the boring parts. Next up, Splatoon 2. I don't have much to say about Splatoon other than it's Nintendo doing what Nintendo does best, and that's taking a genre and kind of flipping it on its head. They took the third-person shooter genre, was able to make it family-friendly, and still look appealing and look fun. Have not personally played Splatoon 2, but I know people that have, and it does look like an enjoyable experience. Something I might actually get eventually. Next up, a game that is high on my radar of games that I need to play, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. This game looks awesome. And I'm not saying the gameplay... I mean, everything about this game looks awesome. The graphics actually look really good. The gameplay looks fantastic. And apparently it tells a very deep and tragic story that is done really, really well. It looks like everything I want in a game. And it's definitely something I'm going to be picking up. The thing I find most fascinating about this game, though, is that it's a budget release that basically got done, I believe, is it Ninja Theory? God, it's Ninja something. Basically, they made this game on a budget in an industry where games are, have teams of like freaking, hundreds of people working on them and multi-million-dollar projects. It is fascinating to see a game with this much polish and that looks this good come out, and it's a budget game sold for like $30 or $40 at release. And I think it's kind of a wake-up call, at least to me in this industry, that what, all of these companies keep talking about how it's so hard, they got to keep throwing in loot boxes and microtransactions because they just can't be profitable otherwise. They can't make these AAA game experiences that you love so much unless we do those things. They cost too much to make. And a game like Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice comes along and shows us that, what, maybe a passion project with a smaller team can do just fine. And the developers have said it's sold way more than they ever expected. It's doing awesome. And maybe it's a wake-up call that's to maybe say, hey, you can still have great game experiences without doing ridiculous stuff. And so it is absolutely a game I want to play. I've heard nothing but good things about it. It looks like an interesting character, an interesting story, interesting gameplay. And it's one that, honestly, based on everything I've heard, is probably one that shouldn't be missed this year. Next up is Nidhogg 2. I'm going to be honest, I haven't played a ton of this game, but I loved the first Nidhogg. If you guys don't know, Nidhogg is just, I would hesitate to call it a fighting game, but it's a one-on-one versus game where you're like two dudes, and it's like fencing simulator, and you're just trying to kill the other dude, and then you're trying to run. You're basically trying to run to your goal line without dying, because then the other player gets to run to their goal line, and it's like a tug-of-war battle, and whoever gets to go get eaten by Nidhogg first wins. And so it was a very fun little party game to bring out, because it's just so wacky, and the hype gets unreal when things get like serious, like you're sweating. And so Nidhogg 2 rolls around, and the art style goes from like the very pixelated DOS look of the first game into like this weird, wacky, can't even describe it art style. Legitimately, it kind of looks ugly. I don't know how else to say it. And I'm not the only one to say that. But I'm not gonna lie, after picking it up, my group of friends, they came to my place a couple weeks ago, and I was like, whoa, Nidhogg 2 is out? And they're like, yeah, I don't know if I want to play it, though. It looks not as good. I was like, okay, well, we gotta give it a shot. And what enveloped was like, there was like a moment of like 10 minutes or 15. I lost track of time. It was intense. I was sweating. It was an incredible battle between me and my friend. And the thing that really makes Nidhogg 2 worthwhile is we get more stages, which are awesome. The soundtrack continues to blow my freaking mind with like techno club music. I don't know how to describe it. It's awesome. And there's now different weapons besides the sword, and it cycles through them throughout the battle. And so like every time you spawn with the other thing, and certain weapons sort of counter other weapons. And so it's kind of like, it's like the joke was like, I got the broadsword now. Now you're screwed, and you just like, you hit them once and they explode. But then you get the bow and arrow, and it's like you shoot them from a distance. It's just wacky fun. I don't really know how to describe Nidhogg other than you really just need to see gameplay of it, because it is what it is. It's so simple at heart, but it is intense. It's like what Dive Kick was trying to do when Dive Kick came out. It was trying to be as simple as possible but still have depth. Except Dive Kick kind of failed because it got boring fast, whereas Nidhogg continues to be frantic and fun because it is simple enough to where I can hand anyone a controller and they're gonna do crazy things. But there's also enough depth to be truly good at the game and have intense moments of back and forth. And so Nidhogg 2, I know it looks like garbage, it looks unappealing, still think you should check it out because I had a blast with it. It was very fun. Fun Nidhogg experience. Next up, okay, XCOM 2 War of the Chosen. I'm not going to say anything here other than I thought it was a very fun game. It was a good expansion, maybe a bit on the pricey side, but any fan of XCOM should check it out. If you're interested in hearing more, I have nearly an hour-long video on it that you can go listen to, where I go really in depth about what this game series has become, my thoughts on it going forward, what I'd like to see, and my general opinions of XCOM 2. So if you're really curious about an in-depth thing, go to that. But otherwise, yeah, it's pretty good expansion. Would recommend. Next up, Metroid Samus Returns, the remake to Metroid 2. And the Metroid fans rejoiced over the world as their precious franchise came back from, air quotes, the dead. Although if you're an actual Metroid fan, you would know that the series will likely never die. It has gone into hibernation many times before, and this wasn't even close to as long as the last time, I don't think, between games. That said, we have a completely new developer doing it this time, and I wasn't sure how it was going to go down. In fact, I didn't have the highest hopes for this game, to be honest. So much so that I actually didn't buy it. I got it lent to me from a friend who did. And I don't know. It was coming off of me playing another Metroid 2 remake, also known as AM2R, last year, which was basically a fan remake of Metroid 2. It got shut down, but let's be honest, if you look even moderately hard, I'm sure you could find it sitting on the internet somewhere. And honestly, it was probably my favorite Metroid game out of the entire franchise. I wouldn't call myself a mega ultra like diehard Metroid fan like some might say. In fact, I don't even think, gasp, Super Metroid isn't the best in the series. I just lost all my credibility right there. But I do enjoy the games quite a bit, and so I went into this with moderate expectations. I was not expecting it to be even close to as good as the fan game from last year, because I think AM2R nailed every aspect of what it means to be a Metroid game, and then went above and beyond anything Nintendo had published in the series. That said, I went into this, I didn't go into this like, oh, I'm going to hate this no matter what. And I was actually pleasantly surprised a little bit. There is a good foundation here. Uh, it plays well. I really like that for the first time in an official Metroid game, it really feels like there's a threat of dying. The enemies do a decent amount of damage. And the boss fights are probably some of the best the series has ever seen. Uh, it's genuinely a very well made game from a gameplay standpoint and as a Metroid game. I think I think it's a good game. That said, I do have issues with it, and I think ultimately I do prefer AM2R. Hear me out. There's a lot of people that are going, "Oh my, you don't understand." Hear me out. I think there's a few missteps that this game got wrong. First off, the enemy diversity is like out of control bad in this game. It feels there's about 4 or 5 enemies that basically exist as far as like regular enemies that exist throughout the entire game. I haven't seen palette swaps this out of control since the Super Nintendo. If I have to see one more red, orange, blue, green, or like white bat, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm pretty sure they had a different color for like each of the 6 or 7 areas in the game. And the same could be said for most enemies. It genuinely was not good. And the only difference between them was that they varied up the timing of when they attacked slightly, as well as the later ones had more health. I don't know what else to say. It's genuinely kind of annoying. And the other major gameplay thing that they introduced that I'm kind of torn on a little bit is the melee counter. I'm torn because in concept it's not a bad idea to introduce. It's not inherently a flawed mechanic. The problem is how it's utilized, and it's basically 100% prevalent throughout the entire game. So much so that early on, until you get the final beam upgrade, like 80% of the way through the game, everything is way too much of a bullet sponge to ever defeat by any other means other than a melee counter. Because you can either shoot them like 15 times for every enemy with one beam, or you can melee counter and kill them in like 2 hits, and get additional rewards on top of the melee counter, which sounds not inherently bad. I mean, you've got to time the melee counter right. But my issue is that it really slows the pace down. It means every enemy I come across, I have to stand there, wait for them to do their thing, melee counter, then shoot them before moving on. Sometimes I want to shoot and run at the same time, you know what I mean? And it's made worse even when you get the better beam upgrades, because while they force you to use the analog stick for movement on a 2D game, which irritates me to no end, they don't allow you to free aim in 3 directions unless you hold down a button that doesn't allow you to move. I don't understand why I couldn't move left or right while still having a free aim, because enemies are almost never in a spot to be shot from a dead-on angle, and they're almost never in a spot to be shot from your 45-degree angle either, that you get when you're running, because you have to be right next to them to do that, and at that point you're in melee counter territory, buddy. And so it just slows the game down, and it turns every encounter into like a game of DDR. It's just, you just time it and you do it. It gets tedious real fast. And not only that, it makes all the enemies feel the same. Which, to me, Metroid games have always been really good about enemy diversity for the most part. Especially back in Super Metroid. There was like different enemies everywhere, all that did different things. Now, I'm not going to pretend that they were effective enemies or really attacked you most of the time, but that wasn't the point. It was about the atmosphere and the variety, and this game definitely does not have that, because every enemy basically has... Okay, people are going to like correct me. There are a handful of enemies that do weird things, but almost every enemy's main attack is, oh, is Samus somewhat close to me? Lunge at her. And so everything just attacks basically by trying to run into you. For the sake of the melee counter, that's really all they do it for, but it makes every enemy feel the same. Thankfully, this doesn't extend to the bosses. While they have melee counters, they're very, like, the opportunities for them don't come up very often, which is a good thing. It allows for actual like combats throughout the game, and they're very fun. I Some of my favorite parts of the game, and some people might really disagree with me on this, but I really liked how it felt like you were hunting these things. You were hunting these Metroids. That was your job. You were sent there to eradicate them. I think it's really easy to make it feel like the Metroids are there to kill Samus when it's the other way around. Samus is there to kill the Metroids. And so there's times where you're shooting down one of the Metroids and they'll run from you. They'll try and flee and you have to chase them down in another room. You have to hunt them. And I think that's super cool, and I think it fits really well with the game. So yeah, I think the boss fights were pretty well done. Probably my other biggest complaint probably is that the game felt really gamey, which is not Metroid style at all. And I'll try and explain what I mean. The Metroid series is a game that's very, very heavy on the atmosphere. It's always prided itself on things making sense, going throughout the world, and it makes sense that areas are connected, and this structure was built over here as like a power plant, and that makes sense. Whereas everything in Samus Returns feels very gamey. Nothing feels like it makes sense in the world. It feels like everything is there for a gameplay purpose. You know what I mean? For example, they basically do their best to make sure every power-up, which is uncommon for the Metroid franchise, but every power-up has a purpose for some kind of traversal or, meaningful traversal or getting through an obstacle. I don't really agree that that's a good decision, but you get weird things like trying to make the spring ball effective, which lets you jump in the morph ball. This was always a tertiary power-up in the other Metroid games. It really was there just for the convenience of it. You never had to use it. You could bomb jump or do anything else. But in Samus Returns, it's like, no, we really want the spring ball to have a meaning. How do you give the spring ball meaning? You already have other ways that are just, they're slower, but you can jump with the morph ball in other ways. They're like, well, no, what if we stuck random fans down here and up here and here in these tunnels, and all they did was suck up the bombs that Samus drops so that she can't use those to effectively just spring ball herself. And it's a lot of stuff like that just doesn't fit in the world. Like, why are these random fans here other than just for the gamey reason of we want to give the spring ball a purpose? And that kind of stuff just completely took me out of the experience. I know it sounds like a nitpick, but this is a series that has prided itself on the atmosphere of it all, and I really could never get drawn into atmosphere in this game because of it. Another funny thing is, when I finished the game, I was really not digging the music at all. And the big thing, and probably the biggest reason why, is some of the transitions just do not fit well at all. And after I went back and listened to some of the tracks, I was like, oh, this is actually pretty good. It's mostly atmospheric stuff, like kind of bleeps and bloops, a little eerie, and it's like, oh, it fits perfectly. And then they're like, hey, remember that fire theme from Metroid that we stick in every game? Oh, why would we make a new fire theme? Everyone loves this one. It's like going to a fire area, and so it's like serene, like atmospheric stuff, and then also it's like da da. It's like ugh, and then you switch back, you go through that room, and it switches back again, and it's just jarring, and it does. There's just music transitions like that throughout the whole game that are just poorly done, completely ruined the atmosphere for me again. So, these are concerns I have. Not to say that the game is bad. I had fun with the game. I liked the challenge. I liked the bosses, and it was genuinely a very competently made game. That said, I don't know if it's as perfect as everyone likes to say it is, but I do definitely want to see this development studio get another crack at a Metroid game, because I think this is a very good, like, off the gate start. Like, they did a good job as their first try, and I want to see more of it. I want to see them correct some of these flaws and make an even better game in the future, because I think they could pull it off. It's a very good base. So Samus Returns, definitely, absolutely worth checking out if you're a Metroid fan. And to be honest, 3DS is getting pretty dry, so you don't have a lot of choices these days. So you've probably already bought it if you're a 3DS man. So yeah, it was all right. I had a fun time. Still like AM2R more, though. AM2R is probably the best Metroid game. Go play it. Next up is, boy, I, this is an interesting game to talk about. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Whew. I haven't gotten into as many fighting games in recent years. The only thing really keeping me going probably is my group of friends where we get together and we play them every now and again, and that's a blast. But I can't get excited about practicing and learning combos and stuff like I once could. And I wanted to give it another honest shot for Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite because, to be honest, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was kind of like our group's main game back in the day. Like, that was one of our big games. We played the crap out of it. We all got really good. And so Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite was coming out, and I was like, you know what? I'll buy it. I'll hit the lab, and I'll let's see how it goes. And I don't think I've ever seen a game drop in my circle of friends quite as hard as this one. I think the biggest thing this game has going against it is like the crappiest story mode of all time. I couldn't stand more than 30 minutes of it. Genuinely awful. And the graphics, I mean, what can you say? They're ugly. They're really not good. And it's not that they're not pushing the polygons they should. I mean that's part of it, but it's mostly that the art style is just garbage, especially when compared to the comic book fueled style of Marvel vs. Capcom 3 that just looked beautiful even today. Or even that sprite based Marvel vs. Capcom 2. It's just genuinely not a pleasing to look at game, and while the gameplay is interesting at first, it is definitely feels mashier than usual, even for a Marvel vs. Capcom game. I just don't know if I can really recommend this one on any level. We played it for like 2 weeks, and then I don't know what happened. None of us said actively, let's stop playing Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, but we all just stopped playing Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. So yeah, if you're wondering, if you're still on the fence, I just give it a pass. It seems to be dead on arrival. I don't really know I don't think anyone's really playing it anymore. I doubt you will probably see it at EVO 1 year. It might be gone. Who knows? Honestly, part of me, the thing that gets me hard to get excited about this game is that Dragon Ball FighterZ comes out in like 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm saving all of my fighting game power for that game. I'm sending everything into a Spirit Bomb for that because that game looks genuinely amazing. I am going to learn that game. I cannot wait to play it. It is going to be a blast. Genuinely looking to be the fighting game of 2018. Keep an eye on it, even if you're not a Dragon Ball Z fan. So yeah, I just don't know what else to say about MVCI. It looks like garbage, and I wouldn't say it plays like garbage, but you can kind of smell it in the air whenever you do a combo. Next up is Cuphead. Finally, after all of these exclusive games for Sony and all of this, Microsoft finally gets something for the Xbone. And you know what? It's pretty great. This game definitely harkens back to like your Gunstar Heroes of past. It's a boss rush game. It's a boss rush game in in that Contra style of like running and gunning. And it's a blast. I haven't played much of it because, again, this is a game I'm going to play co-op with my friend who lives halfway across the state. Don't get a ton of opportunities, but what we played, got through the first world, it's a blast. Maybe the game gets much harder later on. I don't quite see the super ultra mega difficulty that some are shouting about it, but I think that's because, we've been softened over the years by games that are generally easier than the prior counterparts. And me and my friends are actually pretty good at the old Contra games and that kind of stuff, so that probably helps. But the art style is phenomenal. I mean, I shouldn't have to say anything about it. Everything looks beautiful. There's never been a game that looks quite like this, and it's not a game that rides on its graphics alone. It is a very fun, well-made, put-together game. The bosses have tells. It's fun to learn the patterns. It's fun to play a game in this style because we haven't gotten any real super solid games in this style in so long. And I think the fact that it's gotten as critically acclaimed as it has proves that, hey, game developers, we can still enjoy games of this style. Yeah? Like Persona 5, turn-based games ain't dead. We still love them. Cuphead. We still like our old 2D run-and-gun games. It's fun times. So, I mean, if you have an Xbox One and you haven't picked this up yet, I mean, I don't know what you were playing all year. Certainly wasn't much else to play for. I joke. There's a lot of third-party games. But seriously, this is an exclusive worth owning. It's a very fun experience. Next up, a game that I have not played, and I probably won't play for a while, but that's not because I'm not interested. It's just that I'm very slowly making my way through the first game co-op with my cousin. And this is Divinity Original Sin 2. Basically, all I really have to say is that this is an old school turn-based RPG with gameplay similar to like the old Baldur's Gate games, or even closer would be like Fallout 1 and 2. It's a gameplay style that's kind of near and dear to my heart. It's pretty text heavy, pretty story heavy, but it proves that you can make a game like that these days, and people will love it. People still love this kind of game. And the fact that it can be played co-op, and the co-op is genuinely pretty cool, it actually kind of works. I think some of my favorite little touches, at least as far as the first Divinity, I don't know Divinity 2 well enough, but like the first Divinity, when you can have little discussions with your co-op partner, and you can genuinely have arguments about how to handle a certain thing, because you can handle tasks or like quests in a different way. It's like, well, we could kill him now, and then the problem would be solved. It's like, no, let's help him out. Why would we do this? And you can have arguments, be like, bro, let's just deal with this. And he's like, no, that's crazy talk. And then you have little arguments, and it actually, like, you play a little game of rock, paper, scissors, which is kind of dumb, but it actually influences, like, a handful of stats as far as what kind of, like, you can role play a little bit more in your role-playing game. And it's kind of, it's little mechanics like that stand out to me. I love it. And Divinity 2, I definitely will get to one day. For sure. It's if you have a PC, this is probably one of the biggest releases of the year for you, to be honest. Next up, I have not played it yet, but Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus. Very much interested in playing this game. I've had a blast. I believe, is it Machine Games? I think it's Machine. Oh, I hope that's right. Like I said, none of this is scripted. I'm just trying to go off my memory. They have made some of my favorite single-player first-person shooters in recent years. Yeah, you heard that? I mean, they make single-player first-person shooters, something which is basically dead in today's world. If you're first-person shooter, that basically means you're a multiplayer game. And then they threw in a campaign at the end because they knew people would bitch about it if they didn't. But they're genuinely fun games. I really enjoyed their last attempt at the Wolfenstein series. I can't remember if they had a hand in Doom 2016, but basically Bethesda has been on point publishing these first-person shooter games, these single-player first-person shooter games, and this is one that I'm definitely going to play because I really enjoyed I mean, isn't it funny to say we've come full circle from the old id who said story means jack shit in a game. I don't care. Here is BJ Blazkowicz and he shoots Nazis. Do I need to say anything else? Does anything else need to be said? And we've gotten into a completely new Wolfenstein where now it's fairly story driven. BJ Blazkowicz has a personality and a character, and he's genuinely interesting. He's not just like, munching on gravel and being like, God, sure gotta kill Nazis. He has, an actual personality to him, and the people that surround him. And isn't it just funny how that works out? How these game series get reimagined like that. Anyway, This is a game that I'm highly looking forward to playing. If you haven't played the first Wolfenstein, or Wolfenstein: The New Order, well, if you haven't played Wolfenstein 3D either, I mean, that's for historical purposes, that's fun to play. But Wolfenstein: The New Order, highly recommend you give it a shot. Or if you have, I mean, Wolfenstein 2. I'm sure it's going to be a good game. On the same day, Super Mario Odyssey. I don't know what to say here. I'm gonna get it at some point. It's Mario, and it looks to be one of the better Marios in recent years. It looks fun and interesting, and it's got that, you know, fun for the whole family atmosphere, and it just looks like a feel good time. Probably pick it up. I don't know what else to say. It's gotten like, you know, one of the highest reviewed games of the year, and everyone is just freaking out about that in Breath of the Wild. They can't stop talking about it. I'm sure it's good. Plus, you get to possess enemies, and who doesn't want to play as a Goomba or a freaking dinosaur? I don't know why they stuck a dinosaur in there, but hey, if you can possess a dinosaur in a Mario game now. I mean, what else do you want? Next up, and this is gonna be a surprise for a lot of you. You're gonna be like, what? He plays this? Hear me out. We have Call of Duty World War II. A collective gasp as everyone looks at the list I've just talked about of some of my favorite games of the year, and they're like, and he picked up a Call of Duty game. Now, hear me out. This is actually the first Call of Duty game I've ever purchased. But that doesn't mean it's the first time I've played Call of Duty. I've actually played the crap out of this franchise with friends, doing other various things. When I lived with my friend in an apartment, or during the college years. I'm no stranger to Call of Duty, but to be honest, the past 3 or 4 years, I have played next to no Call of Duty. And you might have noticed on this list, there are two things. One, pretty much most things are pretty exclusive to PS4. And none of my friends own a PS4. The other thing is that these are all single-player games, which I love. I love me some single-player. But there hasn't really been many multiplayer games this year. And so this was more of a pickup to have some kind of like popcorn-style game that I pop in and play with my friends, and I turn my brain off, and I'm more just like talking with my friends rather than actually playing the game. And as that, World War II succeeds. It's, I mean, what? I don't know if that's a slap in the face or a thumbs up to Call of Duty World War II. I mean, it's Call of Duty. I'm not really sure what I can say that hasn't been said about the past 6 Call of Duty games, other than I guess I like that the perk system has been trimmed down to where you just pick one, although I don't like that that you grind out each division and you just kind of stack perks together and generally be better than everyone else who doesn't have them. It's the same reason why I've trended more towards games like Overwatch in recent years, where there's none of this equipable crap that's gonna affect my stats, or you're trying to build a class or whatever. I just want to pick a character and I want it to be my skill versus their skill, and that's it. I feel like that's been a lost art in the multiplayer genre. It boggles my mind how everyone feels like they need to have I mean, remember the days when we played games to have fun and not to grind levels or to get a skin? I mean, seriously. I think it's always hilarious when I talk to people and they're like, yeah, what's the progression system like? And it's like, it doesn't have one. That's the best part. And they're like, why would I play though then? And they look at me with like these blank eyes like, why would I play? I mean, it feels kind of empty if I'm not getting something. And it's like, whoa, man. Remember when we played games to have fun and we weren't just trying to grind something? That's what I miss. I miss those days. And so, yeah, I don't like that aspect of it, but everything else is competent enough. It's Call of Duty. It's, I like the World War II aesthetic more than some of their more recent outings. I played a little bit of the campaign, and, I mean, it's a Call of Duty campaign. It's like over exaggerated. I mean, boy, that's gonna come out bad. It's World War II, which was bad. It was rough, but it's also Call of Duty, so everything is like cranked up to 11 to unrealistic proportions of like everything's exploding and your guy's the equivalent of your guy just jumped off a skyscraper, but he's all right, and now he's surfing down the skyscraper because he's just so freaking hardcore. That doesn't actually happen in World War II, but it's that style. I mean, that's just Call of Duty's thing nowadays, and so it is what it is. I played like one mission, and I was like, I guess. So yeah, Call of Duty World War II. It's a good shut your brain off game. Thumbs up, middle. I don't know what to say about it. It's something. So next up, I mean, we're getting towards the end of the year. We're middle November now, and dishonorable mention to Star Wars Battlefront 2. I actually have very little to say about this game, other than, EA. Thank God someone put EA in their place. I think loot boxes have. I mean, for a while now, I've genuinely disliked loot boxes and everything they represent, and I could go. I just they're genuinely kind of scummy. It preys on human psychology the same way gambling does, and it always, whenever you talk, it always devolves into like, well, but I mean, maybe it's not gambling. It's like, it doesn't really matter if it's gambling or not, because it's preying on, kind of the same human instincts. And I'm glad that, I mean, it's kind of like, thank you, EA. Thank you for finally going so over the top, so as to actually make everyone finally upset for the first time ever about it, and get such a backlash that other developers will probably think twice about being as scummy as you were. So thank you for being the first one to be so over the top that we finally had to freak out and kill basically let your entire game die because you were so greedy. For those of you who completely didn't pay attention, Battlefront 2 is basically like you pay $60 for the game and then you play the game, but you're going to be crap compared to everyone else because everyone else has basically either A, grinded for 500 hours because it takes forever to get anything through actual gameplay, or they spent like $50 and basically bought up all the skills and straight stat boosts to be better than you, and so the game basically you're basically crap unless you spend more money after you buy the game. And people did not take kindly to that, and I just can't figure out why, EA. Seriously, though, I find it genuinely funny. I'm glad someone finally went over the edge so that, there's some backlash on them. So good on you, Star Wars Battlefront 2. You were the shit sandwich that everyone had to take a bite of before they finally realized, wow, this is kind of shitty. So, we're nearing the end. The last game for me to talk about, and that is Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Now, I mentioned earlier on there are very few games that I will play that can break that like 100-hour barrier, really like a 30-hour barrier, and I'm still, I really do like shorter games nowadays because I do not have the time I once had to play games. But there's two franchises that can break that rule, and that's basically Persona and Xenoblade Chronicles, and Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was why I bought a Switch towards the end of the year. It's why I'm going to get more Switch games, because there is genuinely a lot of fun stuff to play on there. Although I don't like the console itself, although that's another video entirely. I genuinely think it was rushed and not super great. But the games are good, and let's be honest, that's all Nintendo's ever cared about anyway. They've always had weird consoles, I guess. But Xenoblade Chronicles 2, super excited to play. I absolutely adored the last Xenoblade Chronicles. Such a fun game. And this one is definitely interesting. It's a little bit more of a departure. It's a lot more anime style. is one way of putting it. It's got a lot more anime tropes and humor to it, and I've seen that really turn some people off, I think. I think some people are hating on it because of it. Although, if you look at that art style, you should have saw it coming. It's tough for me to say. I'm only 50 hours in out of a likely 100. I mean, I'm really not that far. But isn't it funny when you can say that? I'm only 50 hours in. It's like, I'm not even close. But there are some likes and dislikes here, for sure. And I think the combat has improved. I think it is more fun, although it takes way too long for it to get interesting. They really ease you in super slow. We're talking like, I was getting gameplay mechanics introduced like 30 hours in. But at the same time, I think they kind of need to do that. My brother, when he was here for Christmas, he's like, oh yeah, show me that Xenoblade Chronicles game you were talking about. And so I bring it up, and he watches me do one battle, and I'm doing my best. I was like, so you see, you're auto-attacking when you're not moving, and when you're auto-attacking, you're building up the ability to use arts again, and when you have arts, then if you time them just right, you build up your special meter, and you can do specials, but at the same time, you want to chain the specials together with your other teammates, but then at the same time, you want to watch the break gauge and try and topple, launch, and then smash them. And I'm just trying to explain this the whole way through the battle, and there's so much going on. The battle finishes, and he's just kind of looking at it, kind of like really confused, like a confused parent picking up like a controller with an analog stick for the first time, and it's kind of like they're looking at it and like holding it backwards, and they're like, oh, what is this? And he's just kind of looking at it. He's like, I don't know anything that just happened there. I don't know. I couldn't figure out anything you were just talking about. And so it probably is for the best that they introduce the combat extremely slow. But because of that, it starts off relatively like ho-hum until you get the ability to chain arts into other arts, in which case it becomes more fast-paced and interesting. But the combat is definitely more interesting. I'm not sure if I like the characters more or less. And the story, while interesting, I don't know if it's as good as Xenoblade Chronicles 1. That said, I'm still having an absolute blast with this game. Very much enjoying it. Although there are a lot of nitpicks I have, which can be said of the first Xenoblade Chronicles as well. The big standout ones here are that there's just a lot of unskippable crap that constantly shows up. Unskippable crap, like, I'm just trying to pick up an item from the environment, and every time I do, I have to stop, and it plays this little animation where my character goes, come out! And then, like, things fly out, and then I have to run and pick them up. But whereas in the last games, I just ran over a blue orb, and I picked stuff up, and it was just a lot easier. The audio mixing is still pretty terrible. I would highly recommend anything. The first thing you should do is probably turn the... Thank God they gave you more volume sliders this time. Turn that cutscene voice volume up, because you will probably never, throughout a good chunk of the cutscenes, you won't hear anything the characters are saying because the music will overpower them. It's also a very big problem with Xenoblade Chronicles X. Thought they might have gotten that ironed out by now. And generally, the story is slower paced, I would say, than the prior games. That said, I'm having a blast with it, and the main draw of the Xenoblade Chronicles games to me is the exploration and sheer like world that you're in. So in the first Xenoblade Chronicles, the world setup was that there was the entire Earth was basically like nothingness. It was just an ocean. And all life was found on top of two robots that basically had a duel to the death and then died at the same time with both of their swords going into each other, creating like a bridge between the two. And so all life took place on top of this giant robot. And it was kind of like a surreal world where you're climbing on the shoulder, but it was like this big open landscape that almost seemed like it was like a realistic landscape. But then you glance over and you see the rest of the robot, and you realize that, yeah, you are still just on the shoulder of the giant robot. And it was this cool, like, exploration, climbing mountains feeling that I just don't get anywhere else other than these games. It's super fun. It's fun to just roam around and try and kill high-level enemies that are way outside your ability to kill. And then, so we get into Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and the story setup is similar, but in a different way. So the world is an ocean of clouds, and essentially, the legend goes that there was a god or a creator inside this giant tree in the middle of it all. And everyone was super happy, everyone was having a good time, and then one day one of the humans did something to piss this guy off, and so he kicked them all out. Kicked them all out of this paradise in the tree, like this Garden of Eden, and left them to fend for themselves. And at the last second, he felt sorry for them because they were all going to die because there was nothing to live on. And so he created these giant beasts called Titans, like enormous beasts. And so now everyone lives on the backs of these gigantic animals, and all the Titans look different. And so now you have these huge landscapes that are like on the back of a Titan or like the inside of a Titan. It's very cool, similar to the first game. It's just very fun to explore. And it's definitely the main draw of the game. So yeah, I look forward to the next 50 hours of it, I'm sure. It's a blast. It's genuinely a very fun game, and I think if you're a fan of the first Xenoblade Chronicles, whether you enjoy the characters more or less than the first game, you're still gonna have a fun time because it's still more Xenoblade Chronicles. You know what I mean? It's a really, really fun game. And I just remembered that there is one other game that I have not talked about. And I mean, it's kind of, only the most played game right now out of like everything. You know what I'm talking about. It's PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, which is gotta be one of the worst name ever. I have no idea how this game became popular with that name. But thank God we can all say PUBG instead of that, and everyone knows what we're talking about. Because if I had to say PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds every time I wanted to talk about it, it would be a disaster. But PUBG, I don't, it's weird, I mean, I have a dislike of early access games for a lot of reasons. One is the trend we've seen over the prior years where they just never really get a full release. They're just always in early access, and they always use that as a crutch for having a broken game. And I just don't see the point in paying to beta test. You know what I mean? It's alien to me. I mean, a beta test should be something that they're thankful we care enough to do. And generally, the early access games are really broken, and I, as on principle, try and never buy them. That said, PUBG. All of my friends on PC were playing it. They're all like, "Wow, you're really missing out, Mino. I don't know what you're doing." It's like, all right. I'll give it a try. This is the one chance early access has to impress me, and I'm sure it'll fail tremendously. And I played PUBG, and whew, I mean, yeah, to be honest, kind of deserves the popularity it has. It's such an interesting and unique gameplay idea that is fresh in a multiplayer space that everything feels so similar to each other. And I'm not gonna lie, throughout those early access days, it was buggy. It didn't work very well. It was laggy. The servers were crap. I would be driving a car, and then all of a sudden the car would like flip and roll because I hit, I don't know, an anthill or something. But despite all of that, the thrill of it all still kept me engaged. I just realized I haven't even really talked about what this game, the concept. I shouldn't have to. Unless you've been living under a rock. Out of all the games on this list, this is the one you probably have heard the most about. It's the most played game on Steam. It has like 30 million concurrent players, 30 million players now, and it routinely has like over 2 million concurrently playing at any given time in the day. It's it's an industry changer. It's a game changer, so to speak. The concept is simple. You airdrop in, literally drop from a plane into a very large map. You and 99 other players, and last man standing wins. That's all there is to say. You drop into this map with absolutely nothing, and it's up to you to go grab loot as fast as possible and just try and survive, because everyone's out to get everyone. And it is tense. Probably the most brilliant thing about this game that keeps it from being like every other game similar like this, like a DayZ, is that there's basically a killing circle, and it slowly closes in more and more randomly every game. It always closes in at a different location every game. And so it not only forces players to basically meet up in certain scenarios, so you can't just camp the entire game, but it adds this dynamic of motion that games like these large-scale games aren't known for, because most of the time it would be, I sit on this ridge with a sniper rifle until someone walks by, and then I win. But you can't really do that in PUBG. It forces you to be active. It forces you to engage the game. And I'm not going to lie, there are a lot of slow moments. In fact, sometimes there are games where you're just running into the circle, trying to stay in it the whole game, and you might not see hardly anyone until 15 minutes in. But it's like the build-up, the payoff. It's all building to this like climactic battle, and you only have one life. If you mess up once, it's over. And so for the first time in a long time, every kill feels satisfying. Probably for the first time since like Counter-Strike 1.6. Never before has a kill felt so satisfying, because they don't just respawn. They're out of the game. And the same for you. So every time you meet up with an enemy is a tense moment. And so I think the circle is brilliant on a lot of levels. Mostly because it keeps its random nature keeps this very large map alive. Because if it wasn't there, I guarantee you every encounter would boil. Like if it wasn't as random as it was, every location would just like boil down to like these preset, like pre-built areas that just always feel the same towards the end. And it's like, oh, here's my specific strategy for the double high-rise building on the west side of town. Whereas now it's like, holy crap, this time it's in the mountains. Like it's on top of like the final circle is like on top of a mountain. So everyone's like trying to scale this mountain, and everyone's like getting picked off as they try and like find some kind of cover. It's just really interesting, and it's the perfect kind of game that and there is teams you can drop in with as teams of 2 or teams of 4. Teams of 3 if you want as well. But you're still going to be matched up against other teams of 4. And it is such a fun game. To me, this is like such a good game to play with friends. Not only for a couple different reasons. One, you have social interaction during the downtime. You're going to just be chatting to your friends about random crap, because there is downtime in this game. There's going to be that 10 minutes or so before you might meet someone else, before you encounter another enemy. But when it gets into it, it gets serious, and it's tactical. It's like, all right, I'm going to throw a smoke grenade, and so they're not going to know. They don't know you're here yet, so you're going to run around to the back side of the house, and you're going to use your shotgun and blow them down, and then I'm going to run forward, and it's like, it gets tactical. It gets intense, because everyone only has one life, and if someone in your team dies, then they got to spectate. And you know what? It can be fun to spectate people sometimes, and you cheer your friends on, and yeah, one of my favorite multiplayer games in a long time. I can't believe I'm saying that. I genuinely don't like early access, but it's now officially out of early access, and honestly, it's really much better now. It feels like a full release now, which doesn't happen very often with early access. And the other thing I really like about this game is there's none of this progression crap where I'm equipping perks or anything like that. It is you versus them, no unfair advantages. Well, and this is another this is either going to be a plus or minus for people. There, due to the random nature of the game, you might find jack squat when you drop in. You might not find a gun, and you're going to have to like try and punch someone down that has like an M16. And that's just the nature of the beast, man. I find that interesting. The reason I find that interesting is because any other game would be like, all right, pick this gun in your loadout because it's the best gun in the game. You shouldn't use anything else. But now it's like, yeah, there are guns that are clearly better than others. But you know what? You got to make do with what you got. Either that or kill someone and find some better stuff. I love that variety to it. So yeah, this goes without saying. If you have a PC capable of playing it, I don't know why you haven't bought it yet. Chances are you have if you have a PC capable of playing it because, like I said, it's now the most popular game on Steam. By a long shot. I mean, it's not even close. Like, Dota 2 and Counter-Strike held those positions at, like, I don't know, maybe 1 million concurrent players or something like that. And PUBG basically has double that. Its appeal is massive. And I think it's interesting. It's basically created a genre, and I hope you guys are ready for the, air quotes, Battle Royale genre, because I guarantee you right now, every major publisher has a PUBG clone in the works right now. Everyone wants in on this. We've already seen it happen with a couple other games, but the second this game hit the most popular on Steam, I guarantee you everyone said, welp, we're also going to have a 100-player deathmatch, and our gimmick will be this. But honestly, it's not much of a gimmick. It's just the same as PUBG. So I hope you're ready for basically this to become the new norm of multiplayer games. So prepare to get tired of it real fast. So yeah, that is the games of 2017. It was an excellent year. I cannot remember the last time this many good games came out. Seriously, I haven't paid much attention to new games, because nothing has really caught my eye for the last couple years or so. And then this year came, and here's all these fantastic single-player, multiplayer games. And I think this will be a defining like, people will look back at 2017 and say, wow, that was the year, man. This was the year, this is definitely going to be the best year in games for this console generation. I firmly believe that. But I think beyond that, people are going to look back on this like some of those years from the early 90s and the Super Nintendo days where like all-star games would come out. This is going to be right up there with them. Seriously, everything I talked about here, there's so much worth playing. So much worth playing this year. Unfortunately, a lot of it is on PS4, so if you don't have one of those. Some of them are on PC as well, but it gets tougher. But there seriously was something for everyone to play this year. I generally don't do like top games or whatever, and I don't even know if I could do a top games here, but if I had to choose one, I think you guys all know what I would say. It's gonna be Persona 5. If nothing else, if you say, boy, I just don't know how I feel about these new games. Back in my day, they were better, and get off my lawn. Play Persona 5. It's the one game that I think, not only in that genre, but I think it's a defining game of this year. I think most people are going to disagree with me. They're going to say, no, Breath of the Wild is the defining game of this year. To that, I would say open world games are a dime a dozen, and you might be the best, a really good open world game with the Nintendo appeal. But Persona 5, man, with how much style it has, and bringing back what I would consider to be a mostly dead genre in the eyes of big name studios, which is the turn-based JRPG, bringing it alive again, showing that we do want this, and the style it has. I mean, not everyone will agree with me, but I personally think, but for me, it was by far the most enjoyable game of 2017. But I don't know if I could rate like 2, 3, and 4. I do think Gravity Rush 2 is criminally overlooked. I think it got buried under the hype of Resident Evil 7. I think it got buried under the hype of a lot of games, and it got forgotten about. And I think that's a damn shame, because that game is just fun. It's It's just a fun game that doesn't take itself too seriously, and it harkens back to a day where we just played games for fun. We weren't trying to fill out 100% completions. I mean, you can do that, but we were just playing games because there was this weird world that with weird, interesting ideas that we wanted to be a part of, and that's kind of what Gravity Rush, like the Gravity Rush series, is to me. It's just a fun, feel good game. It just makes me feel jolly when I play it. I'm gonna try and rank them. I'm not usually a ranking guy, but I know it's gonna drive some people nuts if I don't say which ones are like the most. Number one, yeah, it's definitely Persona 5. I think number two, the one I enjoyed the most, but I think it's really gonna be a love or hate it game. You're either gonna latch onto it and you're like me and you're gonna think it's amazing, or you're really gonna fall off. Maybe because it's either too weird or you just don't want to hang in there to see how brilliant the story becomes. And so number two is Nier Automata. It's a beautiful game. If nothing else, if you can't handle the weirdness, at least go listen to the soundtrack because it is beautiful. Number three is Gravity Rush 2, like I just talked about. Gravity Rush, it does not deserve to be forgotten about. I feel bad. It's such a good game, and it just happened to release alongside all of these other great games that came out this year, and I really feel it just got lost in the shuffle. Seriously, give that one a look if it looks interesting to you. Number four, and this is where it gets tough, because it's like, I think it would be Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but I haven't beaten it yet, so I can't really say for sure, but I think Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is number four, which is probably going to surprise some of you, considering, like, I don't know if I've said this before, but Xenoblade Chronicles 1 was probably my favorite game of last gen. And so it's definitely strange. It's definitely strange to see this one fall down lower, but it could change as I play more of it. I think it's just because the characters don't seem quite as strong, but the combat's really cool. It's a unique game on the Switch. The Switch is like Port Machine 9000. At least it's an original game. Go give it a play if you have a Switch anyway. And number five, probably Resident Evil 7. And it's one of those games I feel like it should be high. This is why I hate ranking. I feel like Resident Evil 7 should be higher because it surprised me in a lot of ways with how good it was, and I was not expecting it to be that good. It's seriously a game that, if you're still into survival horror after the glut we had, and even if you got burned out, because I'm a person, I got burned out on that same glut, Outlast, and all of these games kept coming out, and so I didn't know what to think Resident Evil 7, and I went in and I was very pleasantly surprised. It shows me that genre has not been oversaturated. We've just been waiting for a great game like Resident Evil 7 to roll along for that genre, and so if you're into those kind of games, you really need to check it out because it's quite good. And yeah, there's other games all the games I've talked about, there's so many other games that deserve to be played from this year. But I guess as far as those five are the ones I personally enjoyed the most. It's a very fun year, great year. So yeah, there's so many games to play, so many games. Let me know what your favorite games of 2017 were in the comments. If I missed anything, I know there's a lot of games I didn't talk about. There's games like Destiny 2, and I know there's some other big ones that I missed. But to be honest, those are the kind of games where I don't have much interest in playing them, so I didn't talk about them. Figured if anyone's going to speak on them, it shouldn't be me, because I haven't played them, nor do I have a whole lot of interest in them. So yeah, let me know what your favorite games of the year were. 2018 is looking more barren to me, but maybe I haven't looked hard enough. Dragon Ball FighterZ is coming out, and I can't wait for that, but beyond that, I'm not sure what I'm getting excited about yet. So yeah, if you guys made it this far, I feel pretty good about the time. I thought it was going to go longer I thought it was going to be at least like 2.5 hours. I'm feeling pretty good. Hopefully this wasn't too rambly, but like I said, you guys know what you get with me. So, till next time, thank you guys so much for watching or listening. Seriously, really appreciate it. Love to hear your guys' thoughts on the year and the upcoming year in gaming, because I do love this industry. Until next time, later everyone.